So my career and leadership journey has been a combination of both thoughtful choices and serendipity. When I started my career, having graduated in pharmaceutical sciences and then an MBA in marketing, pharma marketing was a logical choice. But as you move forward in your career, you think about whether you're gaining the right experiences and decide to make a shift in a very thoughtful manner with clarity on reasons why you're taking on another role and why you're changing an organization and what impact you're likely to create in this role. I've been extremely fortunate to have worked for some of the best organizations in this country and some of the best organizations in their respective sectors. Overall, my journey has been extremely enjoyable. I've enjoyed working from one sector and transitioning from one sector to another, from one culture to another, taking on a challenge, a new challenge every time in a different sector. I think personally for me, what it has done two things. Firstly, it has given me a huge opportunity to learn and to contribute, looking at things, especially when you come from outside the sector with a fresh pair of eyes. It has allowed me at times to transfer best practices from one sector into another and adapt them as relevant. Now, all of this, I'm sure you would agree, requires a significant amount of intellectual stretch and widens your perspective, allows you to think broadly. Secondly, and more importantly, it has given me the opportunity to expose myself to a very diverse set of challenges. And it has given me an opportunity to work with very different set of leaders in a very different cultural context. So this forces you actually to broaden your leadership repertoire hugely. A completely new environment tests you as a leader, makes you more flexible and adaptable, and for sure makes you more resilient. So with all these differences, one of my biggest learnings, while this is how it has helped me, is that there are certain things that are common across sectors. So consumer centricity and the power of trust and empowerment as a leader that you require to build a team is actually sector agnostic. So it's been a very gratifying journey. And as I said, I'm very blessed to have worked with some of the best leaders in the country and in some of the best organizations. There are several experiences and very rich ones at that through the journey that have had huge impact on me as a leader. And there have been some terrific challenges that I've had the opportunity to address. But I'll talk of one particular challenge to be able to amplify what I'm trying to say. This is in my current role. I joined ABFRL about 2.5 years ago to lead Pantaloons and subsequently Jaipur, which is a brand that we acquired. There are several firsts in this role. One, of course, like some of my moves before, this is also a completely new sector. And it is also my first listed company role. My mandate was to transform the business in order to win in the marketplace. What stood out for me in a few months after joining is the sheer level of operational complexity at multiple levels in this job versus any other role that I've done in any other sector before this one. The fact that we are dealing with aesthetics and trends in design, and the fact that we make 5,000 to 7,000 new designs of clothes every 4 to 5 months gives innovation and the complexity of innovation a completely new dimension. The long lead time that we have in terms of supply chain, where you're actually betting perhaps 7 to 8 months before in terms of what's likely to be the trend 8 months later, and you're placing big bets on what you buy in advance, brings in a different level of complexity. The complexity of running our stores in an efficient and a productive manner, and we have about 300 plus of stores and very large format that we run, is again a complexity of a very different nature. And this business is a bit like a relay race. It has huge amount of interdependencies between functions, and you can't really afford to drop the ball at any given point of time. The second difference, on the other hand, was the fact that this business offers you the opportunity to work across the value chain to create a compelling proposition for the consumer. So unlike the FMCG industry where the channel does not belong to you, in this case, the stores are ours, right? So right from the time I conceptualize my strategy to figuring out what kind of clothes and translating that into execution to putting it out into our wonderful stores, I think you have the ability to influence things across the value chain. Now, that's the context of complexity. And that was my big takeaway in the first few months after joining this role. Now, some of my experiences and learnings that have helped me deal with this unprecedented level of complexity was first that to deal with this, one needed to break down silos and create an environment of greater collaboration and build a spirit of one for all and all for one. That was very, very important. And my role as a leader when I joined in initially had to be that of an empathetic listener. Listening to our store staff, listening to our consumers, listening to my colleagues, my team. It helped me hugely not just identify the task, but also create an environment of collaboration and trust. And I think sometimes leaders also try and rush into answers. It was very important to hold yourself back and to first understand the business in its entirety with empathetic listening, as I said. It's also about asking the right questions as a leader. And after that, the second step, I think, which is something, again, one has learned in one's previous roles, is the fact that once you have understood the task on hand, how do you really help the team try and find that answers in a collaborative manner? So I think that was the first piece, listening and then collaborate, creating an environment of collaboration and trying to then find answers together. The second piece that I talked about in terms of connecting dots across the value chain, I think what we did within 6 months of joining was really to create a shared vision to ensure, again, that there was ownership and the fact that there was a collaborative working environment. Both of these things helped me hugely in terms of setting a new pace, sending out signals in terms of building teamwork, which I think is the single most important enabler for one to succeed in this industry. And I think the third thing in terms of learning was when you come into a new organization as a leader, it's very important that you are not worried about your vulnerabilities. I have never pretended that I have all the answers. And I think it's not important to behave in such a manner. Authenticity is important. Equally, I have been comfortable with being challenged on my own beliefs without necessarily feeling threatened and being open to feedback to be able to give back more to the organization. So these are some of my previous experiences that I think helped me navigate through this very, very complex business in the first year. Crises like COVID, which are true black swan events, I think you can prepare to counter them only when they happen. You can't really predict or plan for them in advance. So as Andy Grove, the founder of Intel, captures this sentiment, and I value what he said, and I quote, he said, "Bad companies are destroyed by a crisis. Good companies survive a crisis, and great companies are defined by a crisis." Every good leader would want his organization to be in that last bucket. So managing effectively through this pandemic has been a test of one's leadership and character. I think it's true for countries, it's true for organizations. And just as you see different results in different countries, it's equally true for organizations. The reason I say it's about leadership, and one of my big learnings has been that this is all about the mindset of the leader through this very, very difficult time. And in organizations, the mindset of the leader in many ways become the foundation and the way to define the agenda for the collective team. So the job of the leader through this difficult time has been to instill hope and optimism. And as you look had the opportunities for innovation and transformation. I think several leaders have sought to pivot the business in a way that one emerges stronger at the back end of the crisis. Opportunity to pivot your business model with a great sense of agility, I think, is what the last few months have been all about. Now, the few lessons that I take away, I think there are about 3 or 4. This pandemic is very unique in the sense that it's not like the natural catastrophes or other situations that we've been through. It's a very unique combination of being completely new and unknown. And secondly, it comes with a lot of uncertainty. Even today, we don't know when this is going to end. Now, that becomes an extremely stressful combination for human beings. And therefore, I think the first aspect from a leadership standpoint is that of empathy. And the need for empathetic leadership has never ever been so pronounced as it is today. And I know we've all moved to work from home, to virtual calls, but leadership is leadership, whether it is in person or whether it is on virtual calls. But it is, while you've been driving the agenda hard, I think it has also been about checking in with people and understanding their issues and being there for them. I mean, initially in our team, we had a lot of women who had just joined the organization. They were living here in Mumbai by themselves with their families in another city. Some were new to the city. All of them were new to the organization. I think providing the right support to people like them and to the rest of the organization became extremely important. So staying connected with the organization and being there for people has been the most important thing. And we brought that to fore with various ways of communication, bi-weekly meetings, larger town halls, one-to-one calls with people, so that people feel a sense of being connected while working from home and while dealing with the anxiety that they were going through. So that was the first learning in terms of empathy. The second one has been the value of agility and quick decision making. We've seen huge shifts in the way the consumers have adopted e-commerce. I'm very pleased at the speed with which we have responded and accelerated our digital transformation agenda, putting out new channels for consumers to shop in a very, very short span of time. So we tried to anticipate some of these things way back in May. And the team put together and executed a very strong plan to step up the experience on our website, to provide innovative ways. Today, sitting in the comfort of your home, you can actually shop in a very safe manner. You can see our entire range through a WhatsApp commerce-based solution. You can call us. You can have a virtual experience of our store. You can talk to somebody, satisfy your questions, and you can have a goodie bag delivered to you all in a matter of few hours. Right? So that's been a huge change. It's been a huge shift, and it required the organization to come together, make decisions quickly, and full marks to the team for collaborating and making great decisions to find great solves in line with what the consumer wants. The third learning for me is in terms of redefining how work gets done and how work will get done in the future. It's also taught me the value of building more flexible and inclusive work practices. And it has helped us discover new ways of working despite being dispersed across different locations, sometimes across different time zones. I think going forward, it will define for several organizations, it will be an input for organizational design and your talent acquisition strategy, because it's no longer important for all of us to be in the same office at the same time. So therefore, when this crisis comes to an end, we will have the opportunity to rework our work practices and also to rethink our talent strategy. Lastly, while I've said this, at the same time, I think we must recognize that all of us have recognized the value of face-to-face interactions more than we have ever before. We all miss it. We are all social animals. The power of sitting together in a meeting room, co-creating agendas is not as easy on a Zoom call or in a Zoom room. And more importantly, I think when you are together, that's where the foundation of trust gets laid between teams, which is very hard to do in a digital manner. So I think also this will require a bit of a rebalance. While I think virtual working and work from home will continue, organizations will have to address and deal the fundamental issue of how do you continue to build trust and address that. So these have been some of my learnings. I don't think I started my career with a clear vision to say, oh, one day I'm going to become a CEO. Like I said, my career, yes, I had clarity on how I wanted to progress. But when I started, did I know, one day I'm going to be sitting here and talking to you and receiving this award and, becoming and being recognized for being a successful CEO? I don't think so. I think the generation today, of course, has a lot more clarity of purpose and clarity of what they want out of life. But perhaps 3 decades ago, I didn't. I surely didn't. One has armed oneself with right leadership experiences. And like I said, I'm blessed to have reached where I have. There are just a few principles that I have lived by, which I think have helped me get here. So I will talk a little bit about those. The first and foremost, I think my parents taught me the need to be honest and the need to really give it your best. Whatever you do, give it your best. I have been a trained Bharatanatyam dancer, and as a person in school and as a school student, when I would go for my dance lessons, I think it just taught you the power of endless hours of practice till you got perfect, and the fact that you needed to work hard to get that to get to that level of perfection, and the fact that when you were performing with various people, you needed to be in tandem with the rest of the crowd. You couldn't go and do your own bit. And I think that one interest of mine taught me a lot of things, and it was reinforced by how I saw my parents. So that's the first thing that I have always practiced. Always give whatever you do, give it your 100% and get it right. The second bit is in terms of having a growth mindset, and by growth mindset, I don't mean organization or business growth. It is having a growth mindset where, of course, the business has a mindset of winning in the marketplace. But equally, for you to be able to achieve that, you need to have a mindset of learning constantly. And that's become even more important in today's world, because if you don't learn, I think you can very soon become irrelevant and extinct. So to ensure one's professional and personal growth, I think a lot of openness to embrace new ideas, to be able to constantly read and learn, and to be in touch with the consumers and competition, I think has been, again, a very important thing as part of a growth mindset in order to grow the business and to grow yourself. The second bit is that it requires you to be very comfortable with your vulnerabilities as a leader and being authentic with people. It is okay to not know everything, right? Nobody knows everything. But I think if you try and pretend that you are the one who's going to create magic, I think you leave a lot of people behind. And equally, as a leader, you don't get well accepted. So that's the second thing I learned somewhere along the line, along the journey of my career. The third one is developing a support system of mentors and friends. That's again very, very important. They create a non-threatening environment for you, who will, there are people who will call a spade a spade. They will at times take away your pressures. They will at times take away your loneliness. So creating that support system, I think, has been again an important learning. I've been again very blessed to have some some very good coaches, my bosses, mentors from other lines of businesses, and some very, very good friends who have always been there whenever I've needed advice or wherever I have felt stuck. And to be able to reach out to them even at midnight to say, oh, I've been thinking about this. How do you think? Is there any other way to think about it? And do you think I'm on the right track? I think it's been fantastic. I've also found great solace sometimes by having good friends at work. I think your employees tend to become your good friends. And I think that's, again, in each of my roles, I've had people who you can walk up to literally even during work, and it makes you feel less burdened, and you have someone to talk to as a sounding board, and find a great way to discuss and crystallize ideas. And the last bit, as I said, is purpose-centric and value-centric leadership. And for you to be able to change your style in line with your purpose, I think becomes an important thing. Finding the purpose is one part of it, but how do you change your style to actually live your purpose? I think is again a very difficult and an important journey. So those are, I think, some of the principles that have led me to the place that I am in today. And I have not just done this by myself. I think every team that I've worked with, every leader that I've worked with, and the ecosystem that I've had has really propelled me to get to this place. So there are 4 or 5 things which I consider as things that defined my style of leadership. The first one is purpose-driven leadership, and it is about finding your purpose and using that purpose to do whatever you do, and more importantly, what you shouldn't do. And in my case, my purpose has been that of helping people and teams find and unleash their potential and live up to their potential. This helps you bring focus on what you do and to be able to create a difference to people in every single professional and personal conversation, I think has been truly my North Star as far as leadership is concerned. The second tenet has been that of creating a compelling shared vision by co-creating it with a team, no matter which job I have been in. I think I've taken the first 6 months to understand the business by talking to people, understanding the drivers of business, but then sitting the team down and co-creating an agenda to build more ownership. The third one is about having a growth mindset. And that's really about being open to new ideas, embracing new ideas, encouraging people to take risks, and yourself being open to feedback. The fourth, which is extremely important, more important in today's day and world, is also leading with empathy and transparency. Very critical that you bring the human side of yourself to connect with people in a deeper manner, because that's what really is more enduring with people. And finally, as a leader, being more comfortable with your vulnerabilities. It's okay not to have all the answers. One must not try and rush into finding all the answers or pretending to have all the answers. And as a leader, showing your vulnerable side, I think just helps people warm up to you and gets people to see you as an authentic leader. So a lot has been said, and diversity. So I'll start again. A lot has been said about diversity and inclusion, and a lot has been written about it as well. And I think many organizations today recognize it's a very important part and a very important agenda. I think there are 2 or 3 things that really matter for organizations to succeed in building this in their organization. The first one is really the authentic belief in diversity, and that I do think starts right at the top. It is the source of competitive advantage. There is enough and more literature today to say that companies which have a more diverse team and diversity of all forms, whether diversity in terms of gender, ethnicity, experiences, geographies, all matters. And the companies who have a more diverse workforce have better performance. It's established in the Fortune 500 companies. There's data in companies out of India. So it is not just a good to have, but I think it becomes a part of your strategic, part of your strategy to win. It receives that kind of time and attention in terms of the actions. So it's not just a tick in the box. I think that's the first thing. And where I've seen some of the organizations not forge forward on this successfully is because it just stays as one of the things to do versus it being core to your strategy. So that's the first thing. The second thing is in terms of identifying really to your question as to what stops women from getting to the top and understanding what are the barriers and what prevents organizations and leaders from getting there. I had the opportunity to lead the diversity and inclusion agenda as part of my CEO role at Kellogg's for all of Asia Pacific. And it was very interesting that when we spoke to women employees across every single market, from South Africa to Australia, the issues that women brought up were essentially the same. And a deep recognition of those issues is something that organizations need to really invest in. And there were two primary issues. And one was around understand my needs. The fact that I'm a woman, don't treat me as special, but understand that my biological needs are different. And the fact that you need to help and support me during those milestone events. And I think a lot has been done in that space in terms of making the workplace and policies more inclusive in terms of the kind of leaves and flexible working and the maternity leave policy, paternity policy, etc. I think on that, I think we've made a lot of progress. But the second thing that women tell you is the fact that they need a lot of support when there is a role that comes up. Women are at times reticent and not confident about putting up their hand. And that comes from at times a lack of confidence, a lack of feeling very well networked into the organization. And that also comes simply on account of the fact that we play multiple roles and we come to work and we perhaps don't prioritize networking as much and we don't feel as plugged into the organization. And therefore, coming out of this barrier, the need is that of support and help me build that confidence. The need for mentorship, the need for confidence building activities becomes important as the second action. And the third one coming out of just this barrier is also the fact that the confidence also at times gets really broken is when you see unconscious bias at work. And that unconscious bias comes from both men and women, mind you. There are many organizations today that specialize in this and help you really address that. But there has to be an overarching strategy to move forward on this agenda and to make it, like I said, part of your strategy. So the set of actions, as I said, what can organizations do more? One is to make sure that it's not a quota, it's not a good to do, but it's a part of your strategy. You believe in it as a source of competitive advantage. And second, understanding what women need are two or three things: the set of policies, intervention around support and mentorship. And the third one is programs around addressing unconscious bias. I think the last bit I would mention here is also, I think all of us play a big role in society in terms of the way we bring up our sisters, our daughters, and how we role model, play role models for them and how we bring them up. And I often wonder that even today in conversations, when women are faced with a choice, even if it's at a milestone event in her life, pregnancy being the most important one, the woman always believes that she has a choice of not coming back to work, right? But a man, of course, is not faced with such a situation, but at any given point of time in his career, doesn't think about it, doesn't come naturally that I can give up work, but women still do. Right? So how do we support and shape the thinking of the young girls today, be it our daughters, be it our sisters, and encourage them to dream big? I think is a role that all of us can play in society, irrespective of the fact whether you're in an organization or not. There are two things I think which would have helped me if I had realized them earlier. One is the fact that to become a better, well-rounded person and leader, you need to do a lot more outside of work, because it's a continuous loop. I believe what you do outside of work actually helps you get better at work. We had this example. I had a fantastic boss again, and I've had 17 of them, all great people. When I was at Unilever, one of them, he would encourage us to look at spaces which were linked to our work. The importance of, for example, understanding creative aspects of photography, creative aspects of makeup, which would help us back in the skincare business. I think, are again some great learnings, which I picked up 20 years ago, and those are interests that I have pursued ever since. But I do believe that today we have to start our careers when we look at our careers. And again, the youngsters today probably know this better, and perhaps I didn't, that what you do outside of work actually shapes your career and leadership journey better, as long as you make the right choices on your interests, which help you strengthen your work as well. And it makes you just a better person. It makes you, it helps you have different perspectives on life. It helps you interact with different sets of people, and effectively helps you bring a different perspective to work. So I think that's the first piece. The second one for me is the fact that learning is a lifelong journey. Right? I left my college and of course did my MBA. By college I mean my pharmacy college, and then did my MBA. And excuse me, my first role, which was in Novartis, I felt that I had to read up a lot, because there your customer is more knowledgeable than you. And I felt in that role I had never gotten out of college. But then you move to other industries and you realize that whether you're learning technical stuff, as was the case in the pharma industry, or you're learning about the consumer, you're learning about how the industry is shaping up, your learning never stops. So for me, I think the second bit, that you need to sharpen the saw continuously, and you need to learn for the future, and you need to keep yourself learning. So these are the two.
Okay.